What was like the Korean music before K-pop? How authentic is the trot genre? Today we will look into the revolution in Korea's music caused by the Japan's colonization and the Korea War. Hi, my name is Henrique Alves, your music history professor, and June 6 was the Memorial Day in South Korea, that type of patriotic day to honor the brave people who served the country. As part of the K-Influencer program, I took the Koreans' modern conflicts to understand the impact it had on the country. So let's go to the past to understand the present. The Japanese colonization in the beginning of the 20th century ended the Joseon dynasty after several imperialist movements by the great powers such as the British Empire, United States, and of course Japan. Like many Asian nations who wasn't under their influence, Korea was a closed country in a world increasingly globalized by the Industrial Revolution. Seeking new consumer markets, they forced the opening of the Korean ports. This was well represented in the K-drama Mr. Sunshine, which I highly recommend. Japanese rule accelerated the westernization of Korean society, as Japan itself had adopted Western ideas and values, mainly during the Meiji Restoration that allowed the country to become an economic and industrial power. One of these ideas was the music from the European traditions and the modern popular music that was developing in the USA. As Western music was so different in form and character from the Eastern music, the culture shock gave rise to new forms that blended or adapted the new ways. Japan's acceptance of Western culture was relatively voluntary than many Asian countries. Music was one of the forms of propaganda used to spread capitalist and liberal ideas in new genres like enka, a type of popular music that often had political lyrics, and gonka, the Japanese version of military band music. In Korea, the westernization process was systematically imposed by colonialism and masked by the idea of modernization. Talking about music, there were only a few influences outside Asia. But at the end of the 19th century, many Christian missionaries were allowed to come to Korea at the time when Europe and America was forcing treaties. They brought hymns that were translated to Korean and taught in mission schools, being called chansonka. Another great influence was the Western military bands, who made the Korean Empire organized an imperial band and ordered a national anthem wrote by the German composer Franz Eckert in 1902. Few years later, Korea was turned to a protectorate and in 1910 was annexed by Japan. After that, court music was suppressed and the royal music departments from Joseon reign was scrapped. As many rites and religions were banned, ritualistic music was also repressed. On the other hand, folk music, before transmitted orally, was favored being recorded by emerging American-Japanese companies. Many folk genres developed incorporating Western elements such as pansori, a folk storytelling through song that spawned Janguk based on the European operas. Still, traditional music became a niche, just as it did in the rest of the world, where mass production turned to popular music. Not only that, it began being seen as primitive and hidden, a vision that persists until today even with government efforts. Fortunately, since the beginning, a few institutions and musicians worked to preserve their heritage, as the Japanese government made exceptions at times. Now I will focus on the development of the popular music, but before I want to invite you to subscribe on my channel to support my video production. Here I talk about music from any time and any place. With Japan's occupation, Western and Japanese songs were imported and many gained Korean lyrics. These songs were especially school music, which was made for indoctrination purposes such as Tongyo and Yuheng Changa. Yuheng was the word to describe any foreign type of music, and Changa was the Korean name for shoka, a Japanese scholar music related to enka. This music was the beginning of the Korean popular music, and I need to explain this because there are some confusing terms. Generally, popular music refers to the mass production songs from 19th century onwards that includes all the genres we know today, except traditional and classical music. This production is controlled by the American industry, and because of that, popular music is confused with American music. In Korea, the meaning of popular music will have the particularity of the colonial context because it was the result of the foreign culture observing via Japan. Both in musicology and in popular discourse, there were several words to describe Korean popular music. For the purpose of this video, I will use the common term used today, that is trotto. If you are familiar with Korean culture, you may know trotto as the sentimental type of music that Korean old people listen to. Actually, we can refer as the Korean popular music born in the 20s and developed until the 60s when the production became so intense and diverse that new genres emerged to lay the foundations of K-pop and so on. The association with old people is because this was the music from the youth of that generation. Quick reminder for you to like this video, that way you help my channel grow and spread this knowledge. Defining trotto is also confusing because there are some contradictory definitions among musicologists. There was a nationwide and public debate over the definition and identity of trotto, many criticizing for being a dishonorable cultural vestige of the Japanese colony, saying that it was intentionally constructed by the Japanese mass media. One of the justifications lays in the technical aspects of trotto and its link with Japanese music, especially enka. The similarities are the 2-beat rhythm, because Korean music is characteristically in triple rhythm, while Japanese is usually in double rhythm, the modal structure based on the Yonanoki mode. Comparing with the major pentatonic of Western music, a Yonanoki scale sounds like this. And the literary form of 7/5 syllabic stanzas. Korean poetic forms like Seijo and Kasa uses 4/4 syllabic stanzas. Many trotto singers and songwriters received education in Japan, as it was common for wealthy people at the time. Adding that most of the records were made in Japan, apparently everything pointed to the strong relationship between the musical style and the Japanese culture. Meanwhile, other musicologists will highlight trotto as an authentic Korean type of music. Considering the literary meaning of trot, its 2-beat rhythm may originate from the American foxtrot in a slower tempo. But some musicologists will point that there are some records from the ancient Korea and the Kuryo-Kayo prose form that uses the 7/5 syllabic stanzas. Also, they appointed that the vocal technique in trotto is the same as that found on the Korean traditional music. In addition to the kisaings, the female performers that in short time learned the Western styles and naturally adapted in their own way, which can be proved with the use of nasal voice. There are various double rhythm examples in Korean folk music. Another point of view is the emphasis on the transculturation and syncretism. Some scholars examine how Korean musicians have reinterpreted foreign musical idioms, reflecting on traditional local cultural values of their communities. They also criticize the nationalist thinkers for being trapped in some musical aspects, ignoring the cultural complexity of popular music beyond few musical elements. The debate extends to many other aspects, but I think we got the gist. One of the things that made possible the popularization of trotto was the March 1st movement, in the context of the Paris Peace Conference at the end of the World War I. This independence movement pushed the Japanese to soften the regime, which created a cultural effervescence. By the end of the 20s, many musicians were recording original songs about love and the vanity of life, mostly sung by female performers with a kissing background. The third is called the Golden Period of trotto, when the theme lyrics moved to sad stories. It's worth to mention the Shin Minyo movement, as the traditional folk music was still recorded and many represented the Korean resistance under colonialism, such as Arirang, today a national symbol song of Korean people. During the Second World War, the independence movement gained strength with the formation of the Korean Liberation Army and the Allied support against the Axis forces. Japan's surrender in August 15, 1945 marked the National Liberation Day of Korea. Today, another important holiday called Gwangbokjo. Despite the independence, the new political forces caused instability that pushed over to the Korean War in 1950. In the south, the Republic of Korea was supported by the Americans who were present on the peninsula throughout the 50s, causing a new major cultural impact as the United States became the greatest cultural hegemony in the world. During the war, the Korean record industry collapsed, while the people was divided into soldiers and civil refugees. Against the backdrop of extreme violence, music and other arts served as a form of entertainment for the soldiers. The 8th United States Army stationed the Radio Armed Forces Korea Network for their soldiers that became a popular option for the Koreans. They also held the American 8th Brigade shows with Korean and American stars performing, which the visit of Marilyn Monroe in 1954 is one of the most memorable. Entertainment troupes who have managed artists since the 30s continue to play an important role in performing, and some of them had specialized for American military camps, the MIA Gun Showdown. The collectives were very influential in the 60s, especially in groups like the King Sisters, the first Korean group to be successful in the US. From that point, the Korean songwriters observed the American popular trends to appeal to the American soldiers, as well to bring some exotic effects on the South Korean audiences, particularly the urban petit bourgeoisie. In some degree, Trot became recognized as a particular song type, differentiating from other American pop styles, as MIA Gun singers acquired popularity among the Koreans. Afro-American and Latin dances genres soared in popularity, as the Koreans got more open-minded during so difficult times. The mambo craze who took America was associated with the new cultural costumes that shocked the Korean traditionalism. This liberal movement would weaken with the military coup in the 60s. In this decade, the American influences, especially the jazzy styles, would continue to shape the Korean popular music while the society was processing the transformations that changed the Korea Peninsula forever. If you like Asian culture and love art, I drew this illustration in 2021 for a contest about traditional culture in Korea, and you can buy it in several products. In addition to acquire this art that I made with so much love, you help finance my work. Please check the link on the description. The thesis of Min Jong-sung divides the perspectives of Trotto between essentialists and evolutionists. The essentialists emphasize the origins of the genre, while the evolutionists will look into the transculturation process. In the 60s, there were even a banning and censorship in Trotto. But looking from outside, we realize the complexity of the cultural and political relations that exist in the world. Trotto, or whatever term you prefer, is part of the Korean history and is undoubtedly the result of the expression of its time and circumstances that the people found themselves in. I hope to make more videos about music history and delve deep in the Trotto genre. All the references will be in the pinned comment. Thanks for watching and see you soon on the next videos. Bye! Nem acredito que terminei.